Computer. So good morning, everybody. Specifically Michael, since he's here. And today's talk, lecture, or whatever you want to call it, will be on making sure that your website is compliant with ADA, American Disabilities Act, so that you don't have issues with people with disabilities. I provided for you a number of tools under web tools on both the weekly syllabus page and also the handouts page. It's the same one. So we can start with a number of them. I'll explain what they are. There is Blender, which has to do with people with color blindness. So if you have images on your website and you want to know what they look like to people with different types of color blindness, this is a website where you can go. Okay. Another one that has provided useful is Juicy Studio. One of the things that can become an issue when you develop your website is making sure that there's adequate contrast between the text and the background. It's especially difficult when you use a dark background like black or deep gray or blue, and then you have a color that's almost the same value for your text. It will be difficult for the viewer to read. So this is a way of calibrating that to make sure that you have adequate contrast. Okay. Another useful source is W3C. That's the consortium for web development, and that will give you a whole list of items available for you, available to you, that probably way more than what you need or want to read that are available. Okay, so those are the principal ones. Now, in addition to that, let me go ahead and we'll just start with my website here. And one of the things that you want to take note of is, what would this website look like if a person were seeing impaired? Okay. Well, what they would do is they would probably go to under, let's see, depends on the browser that you're using. I'm using Firefox. So if I go to tools, I want to go to browser tools, and I'm going to, nope, I'm not going to use that. Let's go to view and see if that will work for us. No, I'm going to use a different browser because I want to be able to turn off. So let me go ahead and use this one here. So this is in Safari. Now under web development tools, this is where it's really kind of best. Notice that they have a whole bunch of them here, and where they are in Firefox, I'm not sure. So what I can do is I can disable styles. So for a person who is seeing impaired, they don't need to see pictures. They don't need to know what font you're using for your type and that sort of thing. So to get an idea of what it's going to look like for them, this is what my web page is going to look like. That's all they need. So a number of you who have had difficulty publishing your website, and it looks like this, is because the link to your style sheet isn't properly working. But this is what it would look like. So I'm using the Safari browser right now. And again, if I go back to development and I turn off or turn, styles back on, that's what it looks like. Okay. So you need to make sure that you're using the proper syntax. And very often that means that the heading distinctions between H1 and 8 through H6 tags are used properly. Remember H1, it typically is the largest font on your page, but in H6 would be the smallest, but it also denotes importance. So for a person reading or a reader that is reading your web page to someone, it will, and I've never listened to this myself, it can discern a distinction between the different heading tags. So that would be important. So, what is your, what kind of content does your page have with the headings, with styles turned off? It doesn't matter what it looks like, but what is the content? Make sure that the syntax is correct, that all of the links work, tables are properly marked up, and that sort of thing. So that would be important for a person with disabilities. Now, websites like the ones for Cerritos require almost 100% compatibility. They say 100%, but I don't even think the school's website is 100% compatible. A website with 100% text and no images would be compliant. And that would be the easiest way to go. But the more complex your website becomes, the more images, the greater number of images that you use and that sort of thing, it presents problems with people with disabilities. Now, another thing that I have talked about before that we should mention here today is when you do use images, you need to create what are called alt tags. And that's really quite simple in Dreamweaver and with the other programs that we've used too, like with the on-site web builder, Wix, or MobiRise. To do that, to add compatibility for people with disabilities, you simply need to select the figure, select the image. And then down here at the bottom, let's go ahead, in your properties panel, let's make sure that the image is selected. You'll see over here to the right, it says alt tag. And notice that I don't have anything specified. So what I could put is just woman at market, or, and I could add open air market or something like that. And that you'll notice in the code view for alt tag, it says woman at market. Now, why is that important? Again, it's for people with disabilities that if they're seeing impaired, they're going to have images turned off. And if they have styles turned off as well, what will happen is that the reader that reads the website to them will, it will show up the alt tag, and that is required for most websites. It's really good practice to do that. It takes a lot of extra work, especially if you have a lot of images, but it is absolutely necessary. Okay. Now, some of the other websites that I was talking about, okay, I only have about 15 more minutes today. But some of the other tools that I was talking about is that, for example, the Coal Blender, okay? If we go to their website, hopefully it's still working. Some of these are freebies and they don't always work. Again, if you want to learn about color blindness, but, free color blindness test app, check, color blindness check, okay? What we can do is you can install this on your on your computer. You can also, let me go back one. Let's go ahead and look at the color blindness simulator. And so you can see, depending on the kind of color blindness, you can see what some of these images would look like, and you can upload your own. So that would be a useful tool if the way that people perceive color of your images is important to you. If it's not, then don't. But you can click here, okay? Okay, so this is what it looks like when it's normal. If I want to see what it looks like with red, red weak, let's see, what is that? Protonomaly. If I want to see what it looks like green, weak, deuteranomaly. If I want to see what it looks like blue, weak, then it will show you what the images look like. So what you can do is that there is a way that this allows you to bring up your own images and see what they look like. So that's a useful tool, is to use Cold Blender. The other one that I wanted to talk about, let's go back to my website. There we go. So that's one that I really don't use all that much, because if a person doesn't see the image the way that they should, at least they do see it. But in color has never been that critical for my pieces. But if it is, especially for people who, or maybe if you do have color blindness and you're trying to design your page for people who see color normally, then that might be of assistance for you. The other one that I really like is the one by Juicy Studio right here. And again, this one creates the ratio. So you can see here, it does a luminosity contrast ratio so that you can detect if there's adequate contrast between the color of your type, or the value, I should say the value of your type, in the background. And so we have here, by default, we have the background color, which is FFF, which is white, and then the foreground color, which is black. Okay. Now, if we wanted to use any one of the other colors that we had here, that we use on our website, I could go ahead and I could put those in. So let me move this for a second. And I'm going to go back over into our styles sheet and look at some of the colors. So let's go back under CSS Designer. And let's look at, I'll make sure that I don't have any of these selected. I want to make sure that we have green styles. And let's look at the nav bar. Okay. And see what we have in here. And let's look at background colors and things like that. We have the hover state. So let's look, for example, if we wanted to see this color right here. Okay, this is a gradient, but if we wanted to use, I don't want to use that one. Let's go back here. Let's use this color. This is 069. So what if I wanted to use 069 as my foreground color? So I'm going to go ahead and put in here the hexadecimal number, 069. And then what I want to do is click on the little button that says calculate luminosity contrast. So if I click there, you'll notice that it gives us a rating, and it's 6.25 to 1. Okay. So it states at the bottom that it passed level AA for regular text, and it passes also for large text. So if it doesn't pass for regular text or small text, then that's something that you would need to change. You would need to make it darker. Or you don't have to, but it would be a good idea, especially for people with disabilities. Okay, so those are some useful tools that we have. Now, the other ones that I mentioned too, let me go back here, is the W3C. And we can go here and we can look at for accessibility. Okay, so if I want accessibility properties here, you'll notice that we can making the web accessible to people with disabilities. So this has pages and pages and pages of information for you that make sure that, help you in making sure that your website is accessible to everyone. So you'll see, get resources for, and you'll see content writers, for designers, developers, educators. So if we say designers, that would be us. We can click there and you can get guides. You can get, there's an introduction to web accessibility. And so if I, for example, click on that, let's see what they say here. So if I look at accessibility context, or making the website accessible, evaluating accessibility, examples, there's all sorts of things that we have here that we can work with. So if I click on here, accessibility context, what is your website accessible for? Make sure if you have sound, is that important? If you have video, you probably need to make sure that you have captions. If there's physical disabilities that people have, make sure that they have accessible through keyboards or that they can do it through visual. There's all sorts of things that are available for you here. Click here, we have more information. There are just pages and pages and pages of information that are available for you here. Okay. Making your website accessible. All right. Evaluating your website. So there's also websites that if you want a test for your evaluation, and you can also look for education standards, that there are websites, there are commercial websites available to be able to do an initial check for your website. And then there's tools and there are suggestions that they will make for correcting any errors that you have. So for example, if I click in here, initial checks, that they'll have a number of tools for us to be able to go and checks to go through to make sure that everything works. Okay. So the W3C it's probably, that would be the web standard to really check. And you'd have to go over it step by step, one after another to make sure that your website is compatible. So with that said, I don't have the time or much else that I can say today. I might go over this a bit more next Tuesday in greater detail, but I have an important webinar I have to attend in 10 minutes. I will make sure that this is posted for everybody though. I'm not making it mandatory for your websites to be compatible with ADA, the American Disabilities Act. But if you do this for a client or you wish to post your website on someone else's, a link to your website on someone else's website, it may be mandatory that yours is compatible. So in the meantime, that's pretty much all I had to say for today. Do you have any questions before we leave today? And I will continue with this on Tuesday. Yes, no questions? You're good? Okay. That's good to hear. Are there any questions about the final website? Know that it's due next week, the end of next week. Make sure that your lessons 1 through 7, or specifically lesson 7, is published so that I can give you credit for it if I haven't yet. And the same with lesson 11. If you want to work through lesson 12 and publish just lesson 12, that would be okay too, so I can give you full credit for that. Make sure that I have received and graded your Wix and MobiRise websites, and then we'll be good to go. Okay. So if there aren't any other questions, that will be it for today. I appreciate you guys attending. And as I said, I will continue with this and we'll go into it in greater depths next week. Okay? No questions? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop recording and I'm going to say goodbye and you guys are free to leave.